What's going on, guys? Back here with another episode of the Winning Browns podcast with just 2 days before the NFL season officially starts. College football has
Yeah.
already started, and that was a little torturous for me. For those of you who are wondering why you see pretty much every rapper in the 90s on my profile picture right now rather than my actual face, it's because I am having technological difficulties. And don't worry, I mean, I don't know if I don't think anybody thinks I'm necessarily a hot supermodel. Although I've made that joke before. And if you really are interested in what I'm doing behind the camera, I am just eating my dinner.
Let's no
But
God.
anyways, going into this episode, we're going to be talking about what to expect in this NFL season. And it has been a minute since we actually dropped the video. We've recorded a few videos since then, but we haven't got the chance to drop due to what's it called, time constraints and
Yep.
schedule mishaps and whatnot. But hopefully we could get a double drop tonight for the channel. I will check more on that on the community posts on September 3rd, 2024, as we are recording it. But let's get started, Kilesh. The NFL
Yeah.
season 2024. I'm excited. I know you are. And there are a lot of interesting storylines to cover coming up.
Yeah. Seriously, I mean, this has been one definitely a whirlwind of an off season, and I think prior to, I mean, we have only imagine we took around 6 months, and it's almost here Thursday. Probably one of the best matchups of the year with the Ravens and the Chiefs. Can't wait to see what unfolds. But now look, you guys know you guys want some content, so we're gonna get straight into it. We're gonna go through our predictions video, look at the top teams from each division, the AFC and the NFC. Look at some of our awards predictions, as well as some hot takes. So we'll go from there. And Yash, if you don't mind, you want to start off?
Absolutely. I thought you'd never ask. Well, I knew you'd ask, but
Yeah.
all right, let's see if I can get this up properly. So here we go. So starting off with Akhilesh's rankings, Akhilesh, I'll give you the microphone and
Okay. Yeah, so my rankings, number one, the Chiefs, number two, Ravens. Those two were the most easy out of all of them, as with both the AFC and the NFC were predominantly. With three, you had the option of putting the Buffalo Bills up there. I decided to go the Jacksonville Jaguars. Holy God. Um, the reason why, look, they have a team filled with a lot of youngsters that have gone and had enough experience, and I think they are now in that time where like they've had enough experience and they're still young, they're very talented, they're going to come together as a group and they're really going to dominate. That linebacker group is without a doubt the best linebacker group in the country right now. You look at their cornerbacks, their overall defensive mindset, top of the league right now. Trevor Lawrence, obviously a quarterback that hasn't proven himself as an elite quarterback, but he for sure is a very good quarterback, and I think he's going to prove himself as an elite quarterback this season. They also have the weapons needed to get them in the playoffs. So I think Jackson Jaguars definitely third for me. Number four, the Buffalo Bills. Yes, they lost a lot of talent, Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, etc. But at the same time, that team is very young, very talented, very tenacious, and I think a bit better than all the other teams in the AFC as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going to put the Buffalo Bills at four. Five for me is the Texans. We saw that defense get much better this season. CJ Stroud is going to have a monster season next year. And that overall team is just very well built. Now, the Miami Dolphins, reason why I'm putting them here is out of an emotional aspect, personally. Look, everybody knows they're a very, very high scoring offense. And the moment they get there, they're going to fall off later in the season. That's what everybody does, and that's what everybody knows. However, this season is going to be different for me. Tua is going to have a lot more motivation going into this season. Everybody's been talking about him as an average to okay quarterback, which I still have that belief in. I don't think he's a stellar quarterback by any means. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a stellar quarterback. You can't give me 400 yards for the first 5 games, every game, and then give me 155. That's just not how an elite quarterback works. You have to finish as strong as you started. And Tua hasn't shown that to me yet, but he could. He could prove me wrong. So I'm putting them at six because I feel their overall offensive mindset is just going to take over. Number seven, I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Is it a bit lower than people would have expected? Yes. The reason why I'm putting them there is, frankly, there's just not enough chemistry so far. We know what's happened with T. Higgins, with Jamar Chase recently, Burrow, and I mean this with all honesty. When you shave off half your head and you look like a minion that just grew out of the dirt, it's it does not go well. It does not go well. Frankly, to me, he looks like mashed potatoes gone wrong. It's just not a good combination on that.
It's the
Um,
vintage Eminem haircut from '02.
no, no, but see, Eminem could rock with it. This guy looks like he put mustard on his hair. It just does not work. It does not look good. So does that affect quarterback play? I think it does, and I don't mind so because you guys already know I do not like Joe Burrow. Don't like him, not because he's a bad player, this or that. I just don't like him. You got a problem, let it be your problem. So 7 for me, the Bengals, I think they can make a I think they're gonna be in the playoffs, but they're just not gonna be nearly as good as we've expected them to be, and they have been in the past few seasons. Number 8, the Pittsburgh Steelers. At this point in time in Mike Tomlin's career, you just have to put the Pittsburgh Steelers above top 10 teams. Why? They always make the playoffs or they always have a winning season. It's just impossible to stop them from having winning seasons. And I think this year more than any other year, their defense is going to be unstoppable. Their defense is going to be unstoppable. I mentioned the Jaguars. The Steelers will have the number one defense this year. I think I can make that bet right now. They're extremely destructive, and TJ Watt is going to have a monster year this year. Their offense, it's going to struggle. It's going to struggle, but that defense is going to help them carry. And that's how Steelers tradition has been for the past 20 to 30 years. Tennessee Titans at 9. That's a very interesting spot. Brian Callahan, I think he's a pretty fantastic coach. Hasn't been talked about enough, I think personally, but he's a fantastic coach, fantastic guy. Really good schematics overall. Obviously, was a pivotal part of that Cincinnati Bengals success. I think he's going to take this Titans to another league. However, I think overall roster wise, when you look at the receiver depth and this and that, they're just not there yet. But I think they
Really?
have a lot of talent. And I don't think so. I don't think they're there yet. When you look at all the other teams before, you look at the Bengals, the Texans, the Dolphins, and every other team here, except the Steelers, they're there offensively. They have the wide receiver. I don't think they've had, let me say this. Talent wise, maybe they are. I'll give you that. Talent wise, maybe they are. But they have not been developed to that talent standard. I'll keep it as that. When it comes to Tennessee Titans, again, defense is good. There are a lot of good pieces, but I'm just not sure how they're going to meld together into performing that destructive defense that they've had. I think Ron, they've had it for a long time with Vrabel, to be honest. Last season was the first time you saw that defense completely fall apart. But overall, the offense, they're in good hands. But is it going to be an immediate success? No, it's going to take time. For me, the Colts. Colts, I would have actually put above the Tennessee Titans. I had that thought going into it, but I had to restrict myself because although I'm a big Shane Steichen fan, and I believe in the Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen style of play. It's just again, it's a development thing. It needs another year before it becomes a. I believe it'll be a top 10 team by next year. This is right now it's top 10. What I mean, I'll say this: it could be a top 5 team next year, based on the way that that team has that talent and it's developed over such a long time. Anthony Richardson and Joe and I think Steichen's system is just perfectly woven in together. Jonathan Taylor, when he comes now out of injury, he's going to be just as destructive as he was 2, 3 years ago. New York Jets. Look, I just can't put them top 5. I get it. Mike Williams, Aaron Rodgers, Brees Hall, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson. They have everybody. I'll give you that, but they're the New York Jets. You never know what's going to happen with the New York Jets. 1960 was the last time they were worth anything. Now, no one cares about them. It's just, it's honestly, frankly, just, I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not going to accept it. First of all, I don't think any new thing is going to happen. I'm just going to stick with the fact that the New York Jets, or I mean, the New York Jets, they're not going to be the best team. They're going to maybe barely make it in the playoffs. That's the biggest hope I have for them. This one's a tough one. This one's a real tough one. Yeah. The Los Angeles Chargers. Cue the sad music and stop. Now, when it comes to Los Angeles Chargers, okay, this is what I'm gonna say. John Harbaugh, I love you. I love you as a head coach. I act like you make my day every single time I see you, I hear you, you make my day because you just energize me more and more as you do every single Charger. Jesse Minter, you're one heck of a defense coordinator. Amazing guy. Your tactics are beyond level. You're taking old school and new school and making it even better. You're making the new school from the old school. You're fantastic. Greg Roman, if you're watching this, sir, and I mean this with all respect, you had the number one rushing offense with the San Francisco 49ers. You had an extremely good rushing offense with the Baltimore Ravens. And I sincerely hope, sir, that you get the best out of this rushing offense here. However, if you don't allow Justin Herbert to throw the ball at least 50% of the time, we're not going to win a game. We will not win a game. If we're going to pound without a single dish on the side, we are not going to win the game. If we're going to allow Justin Herbert to be a robot that just hands the ball all day long, we're not going to win a game. A game. We'll go 0-16. If Greg Roman comes to his senses and uses Justin Herbert at least 50 to 75% of the time to throw that ball, we might have a playoff season. If we don't, we are stuck at 12. This is an emotional one. When it comes to the defense, Jesse Minter, I mentioned before, incredible defensive coordinator. In fact, you know what I'll say? The most sacks on the team will come from a defensive back this year. That's how our defense is structured. We have big defensive backs that are gonna come launching at you, break your knuckles, break your every single bone, make you suffer. That's what we're gonna do, right? And Jesse Minter has that type of big guy defensive line personality, big guys overall. Um, that's what I see from him that he's employed in that preseason all time. And you guys saw in that preseason, the Chargers had the best defense in the preseason by far. By far. With the amount of talent that we have, that was the best preseason defense I saw, right? So, Chargers defensively wise, I'm confident they could become a top 10, top 15 defense this year. I'm confident in that. Their offense, I have no idea. Because we got a bunch of nobodies right now. I'm going to be honest. The draft pick that we got in the seventh round in Cornelius Johnson, Mr. Michigan, he went bye-bye. Like, I don't know who we have at this point. We got Ladd McConkey. We got
Brendan
That's
Rice,
my problem.
Cornelius Johnson, DJ
We
Chark.
have Rice, but I'll tell you what, he ain't Jerry Rice yet. He ain't Jerry Rice yet. I'll tell you that much. Genes don't pass on that quick. I'll tell you that much. So that's that. Now, 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm just going to sum it up real quick. The 13, the Raiders, I just can't put them above the Chargers. It's just disrespectful to our organization. That ends there. Antonio Pierce, I can't wait to watch what you're going to do with them boys this season. 14 with the Cleveland Browns. Reason why I'm going to think they're going to fall off that much, their defense is still going to be great. But that quarterback situation has not improved. You got Jameis Winston, who no way he's going to start for you guys. You got Deshaun Watson, who still hasn't proven anything after that lawsuit. Okay, we're not going to get into the details about the lawsuit, but he hasn't proven anything after that has gotten into his life. Is it tragic? Yes, that's the truth. The Broncos. Now, the only reason why I have the Broncos above the Patriots is because that boy Drew Lock is something special. Yeah, she would agree, I think.
Drew
That
Lock?
boy, yeah.
You said Drew Lock.
Hold up, hold up. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry, dude, guys. I'm just gonna let you on a little insight today. Okay, it's been around the first 2 weeks of college. Okay, I'm on my third week, first day of third week. But I got biology, okay? We're looking at zoology, looking at animals, and I'm not interested in the overall body of an animal. I'm more interested in the DNA aspect. So I gotta come in here and talk about a lecture about heads, tails, and everything. It's boring as anything else. And it's 5 hours long. 12:30 to 4:50, guys, every single day. It's 5 hours long. Now, to my biology professor, you're great. You're great. I'll give you that much. But still, it's a lot. I can't just focus. What in the world is that QB's name? He had a great rookie year,
Bo
I'll tell you
Nix.
that much.
Bo Nix.
Bo Nix, there we go. Why did I say Drew Lock? First of all, who is Drew Lock?
He was a quarterback for them 5 years ago. There we go.
You know what, man? I've never seen this guy's face.
Drew Lock, really?
I've I don't you know what? Now that's where I remember it. I remember seeing him on the Seahawks. That's where I remember Drew Lock from. Okay. Bo Nix. That's who I meant. Um God, I'm having a bad day. Okay, Bo Nix. So the reason why I say the Broncos are gonna be better because that Yash, you would agree. Bo Nix is one special boy.
He is.
I mean, the guy shined in the preseason. I expected it out of him. I'm not gonna lie. That combo with Sean Payton, I expected. I think this is gonna be really the next Drew Brees, Sean Payton connection with Bo Nix. Again, the receivers, they're good. They're not great. Their defense is what just is not. I'm not sold on at all. The Patriots. Next slide. Just next
All right.
slide.
So for my rankings, I'm gonna be a little quicker as far as the divisions because Akilesh and I have similar opinions as far as the divisions go. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. Kansas City Chiefs are by far the best team in the conference. There's no doubt about that. We know that already. The Baltimore Ravens. The reason I actually think the Jaguars might be a better team than the Ravens this year, but from doing schedule simulations and whatnot, the Ravens have a more favorable schedule, so I expect them to have a better record and have a better seat going into the playoffs. But I still do end up expecting them to, make win their division. In the case of the Jags, why over the Texans? Why over the Titans? Why over the Colts? I've talked about this a lot over the summer through other recordings, but I'm a huge fan of their defense. Their defensive coordinator is Ryan Nielsen. That man is going to be a head coach and a very good one in a few years. Look out for him. He's been doing a great job dating back to his days with the Saints and even Maryland back in college. He is a very, very, very good defensive coordinator, and he has everything at his disposal within one of the best linebacker tandems, if not the best one in the league.
Just Yash, I do want to mention one thing. I won't interrupt you after this. I won't interrupt you after this. I promise. Best mustache in the league.
Well, Shad Khan, he might not even have the
No,
best.
no, 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 not close. This man's got it.
All right. I mean, I won't disagree with you. It's a pretty good mustache. But you got that. You got Josh Allen coming off a career year. Trayvon Walker looks like a very much breakout candidate. Tyson Campbell is a very, very underrated cornerback. And Andre Cisco is budding into one of the best young safeties in the league. I think the Jaguars defense has a lot of talent, a lot of depth, and adding guys like Armstead, definitely Armstead and who's the who's a cornerback they signed this past year.
Uh,
I'm forgetting his name, but he's very
he
good.
was, yeah.
That's my point. And you add on an offensive line that's getting very much better, and wide receiver core that includes a tight end who himself is a very good wide receiver, Evan Ingram, and a very deep core, even if it's not star studded at the wide receiver core. One of the best young running backs in Travis Etienne, and like you said, Akilesh, a quarterback who might not be necessarily an elite quarterback, but he's a very good one, and he's had his moments of being elite. He was one of the from 2022, the second half of 2022 to the second half of 2023, when he had that ankle injury. He had the third highest QBR in the league, behind only Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. He had the third highest QBR in the league in 2022 in the second half of the season, behind only Mahomes and Joe Burrow. Trevor Lawrence has the talent. He's shown it. Whether he's worth the 55 million is a different question, but I think he can at least show that with with more at his disposal this year. And then the Buffalo Bills, at the end of the day, it comes really down to Josh Allen carrying that team. He has an offensive coordinator that's going to make sure he's not going to turn over the ball as much as he did with Ken Dorsey. And I still do think that they're a little bit better than every other team in their division. My question is just who's going to beat them in December? I mean, Miami always struggles in December against Buffalo, right? New England and the New York, I don't trust to beat Buffalo on any occasion. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the Bills are the forefront to win that division by default. and just end up as the 4 seed, whether you like it or not. As far
Yeah.
as 5, 6, and 7, I think the Texans are a standard 5 for both you and me. CJ Stroud is one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. They have a pretty good roster and a playoff roster. People I think are overhyping a little bit with the additions of Diggs and Mixon and Daniil Hunter. They're good additions, don't get me wrong, but I think that
I
they
think Mixon's a great addition, actually, personally.
absolutely. I just don't think that they have the same amount of, at least defensively, the same amount of depth that they had last year, and I think that's going to hold them back at least for a year. D'Amico Ryans is still an outstanding coach, and I expect him to keep that defense at least top 10 at the very least in the league. Um, but I just don't know if that'll be enough to win the division over a Jags team that I think is more complete on paper than the Texans. So for that reason, I'm going to say the Jags win the division. 6, I'm going to go with the Titans. Look, that Titans team, I really, really, really like. They've just been making very good move after very good move this entire offseason. Most teams that spend big, you have varying results, but they generally end up being successful if they get system fits, and that's what the Titans have done. I like the Brian Callahan hire. If you know me, you'll you'll know that I'm not a big Zach Taylor fan as far as what he did with the Bengals. There's a lot of reports that have come out in the past 3 years that Brian Callahan has been more responsible for Joe Burrow's development. He's calling the plays when Joe Burrow is later on in the season when Joe Burrow stops having those early season slumps and whatnot. And he's very good at deep ball, and he's a very aggressive play caller. And I think that's one thing that the Titans especially need. I don't know how Will Levis is going to do. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback. I think that he's an all right quarterback, but the one thing that was good about him, he averaged more than a yard more than any other quarterback last year in air yards per attempt. And when you have a guy who's averaging 10.7 air yards per attempt as a rookie, and you give him one of the most aggressive play callers in the league as far as passing, and that many amount of weapons, whether it's Hopkins, Burks, Kyle Phillips, you got Okonkwo, the tight end, you got now Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. I mean, they are loaded as far as weapons to give, and even Tony Pollard in the backfield. They are loaded as far as offensive weapons for Will Levis. I still have a few questions about that offensive line, but I still think it's good enough. Their defense, on the other hand, their defense is very, very deep. I don't know if it's the most star-studded or the most loaded defense, but I like Denard Wilson as a defensive coordinator. They got some good players like Tavondre Sweat in the draft. They got traded for Ernest Jones very recently. Their secondary, I mean, they already had a pretty good secondary, and then you go and add L'Jarius Sneed, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs to a secondary that also featured the likes of Roger McCreary and Amani Hooker and what's the other cornerback's name? Chidobe Awuzie, who they signed earlier in free agency. It was a very underrated cornerback. If you guys know me, I'm a huge Awuzie fan, and they got him for very cheap. That Titans team has a lot of star players and a lot of quality players at every position with a great coaching staff. I think Levis just has to do just enough to get this team in the playoffs, and I think they will. They have a favorable schedule, and that helps. And then there's the Steelers. Look, I don't know how they manage to get in the playoffs every year, man. Like their offense is just like one of the most it's sacrilegious to watch, really. It really is. Like I don't know what the hell is going on with their quarterback situation with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Whether Russell Wilson is the quarterback for the whole year or whatnot, I don't know. Arthur Smith seems to be another bad offensive coordinator, but they still managed to win at least 9 games, and they have a favorable schedule this year. By tiebreaker, they ended up winning in a lot of the schedule simulations I did as far as the Steelers and the Dolphins. So I mean, they get lucky again, and they have a very good defense. And I think their defense is getting better too. That's something that I think a lot of people are not talking about when you talk about Joey Porter, a breakout candidate for cornerback. You'll see that in the other episode we dropped tonight. But even like TJ Watt is still he's still one of the best defensive players, if not the best defensive player in the league. You got Alex Highsmith, you got Cam Hayward, who ages like a fine wine. Now you get Keontae Benton, DeMarvin Leal. They're going into the third, fourth year. They're playing outstanding football. You get a guy like Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson. I know you like a lot, Akilesh. He provides, at least for the minute, outstanding depth for the Steelers linebacker core, something that it didn't have in the past. They still have Minka Fitzpatrick in the backfield. This is a very deep defense. And I think with Mike Tomlin still at the helm, they're going to do just enough to get squeezed into the playoffs. And whether you like that or not, whether that's good for the NFL to watch them get blown out in the first round, which I don't know if I necessarily know if that's the case. Um, you know, I think the what's it called? I think the Steelers are going to make the playoffs. And I do want to mention one thing which I didn't even notice at this point by tiebreaker. This is because, like I said, I did this playoff thing by schedule simulation. I actually ended up having the Steelers as a 6 seed over the
Oh,
Titans. They
okay.
had the same record. I don't know why that showed up differently on this, but yeah. So the Steelers were the sixth, and the Titans were the seventh seed, but they still both made the playoffs. Point is, and then you got the Dolphins, Chargers, Colts. I think they're around the same page. Like you mentioned, you were spot on with the Colts. So I'm not even really going to go into that. I think Anthony Richardson's just a year, premature before he ends up really taking off. I'm a lot higher on you than the Chargers because I've seen, as a Niners fan, I've got to see what Jim Harbaugh did with that Niners team. I do think that Niners team was a little more talented. This Chargers team has a lot of talent in its own right. Khalil Mack
It
had
does.
17 sacks last year. He's reminds me a little bit of Aldon Smith, although not the exact same player. Joey
Yeah.
Bosa is on the other side. You got what's it called?
You can't mention Joey Bosa anymore, man. You just can't.
True, but he's
You
still
just
he's
can't.
still a talented enough player.
He's
You got
great. He's great, but he just doesn't play that same position anymore. He
fair enough.
almost plays always off now. I hope that gets fixed. I hope that gets fixed.
Fair enough, but you also still have Tuli Tuipulotu behind him, who's still a
Yeah.
very good player. You got two of the young. You have two very young, talented linebackers who have very much similar side to side talent as far as being able to just run down defenders. That Junior Colson and Diane Hinley, that Navarro Bowman and Patrick Willis have.
Yeah.
Not saying that those are the same guys, but you get
They
my
could be.
comparison. They could be, but we'll see. And then you got a secondary that is very much adapt in man coverage, but has zone versatility with certain players. Guys like Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, who played a little bit more of that just aggressive zone type scheme that you saw from a team like the Seattle Seahawks. Um, and I think Jesse Minter is the perfect defensive coordinator for that. You have also a guy like Derwin James, who I think might have another career renaissance in his case. Jesse Minter loves to use these versatile big defensive backs as far as box, nickel, and dime packages. I think Derwin James is going to be a key piece in that type of defense. And for that reason, I'm really excited to see this Chargers team. I also think that the fact that you have an elite quarterback, this is not something the Niners had. What's it called? Back in what's it called? Jim Harbaugh's
2020.
time with the 49ers. That's going to help them, even in spite of the fact that they don't necessarily have any elite receivers. I think they have good enough receivers. I think they have receivers that fit them. They have a run
Okay.
game that fits them. I think they'll do just enough. I think they'll still miss the playoffs because the AFC is a lot more competitive, but I still
Hmm.
do think that they will be in the mix at the end of the season.
Yeah.
As far as the rest of the division, I'm just going to go over this quickly. The Browns, their defense is good enough to carry them in the playoffs. But Deshaun Watson, I think at this point it's fair to say that he's in conversation for the worst quarterback in the NFL. He's just not done anything when he's been in on the football field over the last 2 years. That's just the fact of the matter, right? This has nothing to do with the allegations coming. It's just objectively speaking, he has not been good when he's been on the field. He's shown a couple times some talent, but the fact of the matter is the Browns average less than 23 or what was it, 20 points per game
20 points a
when
game.
he's on the field. That is not compatible for a Browns team that is very aggressive with their throws and expects Watson to be that type of player. So I just don't know what the hell's going to go on with their quarterback situation, and they're still waiting for Nick Chubb to come back. So I just think their offense is going to struggle at first, but they'll still do enough to win, and they have a favorable schedule. The
Yeah.
Raiders, definition of mediocrity. They have some good players, they have some bad players, but I just don't think that they have enough to make the playoffs. Neither do I think they're really that bad to go and end up being the worst team in the league. The Jets, I think you nailed it on the head. The Jets are who they are until otherwise. Um, We'll see what happens with Aaron Rodgers, but he's a 40-year-old player coming off the worst season of his career and then follow that up with an Achilles injury. So it's hard for me to say that a guy who struggles that much with injuries at such a late age is going to carry a team when his offensive coordinator is also probably the worst offensive coordinator in the league, Daniel Hackett. Really, I have no idea how that man has gotten 5 jobs as offensive play caller. It's ridiculous to me. Um, and then you got the Bengals, Patriots, and Broncos. Patriots and Broncos, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Two young quarterbacks, two young teams that are just rebuilding. The reason why I have the Bengals at 14, though, this one is interesting. And this is something I've been thinking about for a while now. Joe Burrow's career trajectory kind of reminds me of another quarterback that was really promising early in his career. And looking back at his film, they had similar film coming out of college too, which also scares me.
Hmm.
Carson Wentz. Joe Burrow, I think, had was a little better than Carson Wentz on tape, but he had similar traits. This is what I mean. They're very aggressive type playmakers who are given a lot of leeway within their system to just make the plays. They're tough. They're tough. They're tough SOBs, right? They are really they will take hits for their team. Everything that you ask for them, they will do. Okay, they really run that offense in both cases. Both of them really peaked in their second. Okay, in the case of Carson Wentz, he would have won MVP had it not been for tearing his ACL. In the case of Joe Burrow, he had torn his ACL in his rookie season. He came back and ended up taking the Bengals to the Super Bowl. Now, in
Hmm.
his third season, I think you and I both had mentioned this, but we also kind of ignored it as far as the advanced analytics showing almost as far as Joe Burrow not necessarily having as good of a 2022 season as most people thought, including
Yeah,
ourselves. And we had predicted that he was going to have a bounce back year in 23. Well, in 23, he struggled with injuries again. But even when he was getting better, like when people started saying that he was playing a lot better when he was not as much injured, he was still just not in control of games. He was always playing second fiddle. He was always throwing to a guy like CJ Stroud or whoever else he played. He was also like
fair.
what's it called? He was always throwing to the open receiver rather than showing that same aggression. He was not as mobile. That's something I saw out of Carson Wentz in 18 and 19, where he might be able to carry a team and look good enough, but it's just not the same thing as like what a Lamar Jackson did for the Ravens. Um,
Yeah,
in 2021 and 2022 or what Justin Herbert has done over the past few years. And the injuries and that slow type of regression, it just makes me think that I don't know if Joe Burrow is going to be the same player if these injuries keep piling up, especially with the uncertainty of his receivers right now with Jamar Chase's contract situation that still hasn't been solved. T. Higgins
yeah,
requested a trade. Who knows how he'll try to play, and then their defense is just not the same defense it was 2 years ago. They finished 31st in the league last year in total defense. I mean,
yeah,
like, that just is alarming given the amount of talent that is on this defense, and that got worse. They don't have Brian Callahan anymore. There are just too many questions on this Bengals team for me to sit here and say that they're worth a playoff spot. In fact, I just don't see them being better than any of these teams, and they have a tougher schedule than every other team in their division too. So it just makes me think that they're going to end up struggling this next season.
yeah. I completely agree. That's a good point, actually. But still, I feel like the theory aspect of Joe Burrow is something that has to be found out later as we go in the season. But you could have a point. You could have a point. So I think what we'll do next. Uh,
Back at it again, and yeah. So as far as Akilesh's NFC predictions, here we go.
yeah. So I think Yash and me are going to be agreeing on the top three: Niners, Eagles, Lions. Eagles, Lions. You could flip around if you wanted to, but I think just with the offensive firepower that the Eagles have right now, and the defensive coordinator with Vic Fangio and Devin White and etc. Their acquisitions with their Hall of Fame GM right now, maybe the greatest GM of all time based on what he's done over his tenure at Philadelphia. He's created a squad, and I dear God hope that this squad can really take it to the next level. Um, the reason why I put the Rams, so I'll go 4, 5, 6. The Rams, the reason why I'm putting them in there is you have Puka Nacua, who I think will go for at least 1,600 yards this season. I think he's going to have more than 10 touchdowns. You have Cooper Cup, extremely reliable, one of the best receivers in the game, without a doubt. Matthew Stafford, who is still, frankly, a very good quarterback. Not elite, but a very good quarterback. That defense, again, we don't know what it's going to do. It's a different defensive coordinator this year. How it's going to work, we're still yet to figure out. But I think overall, with the talent that that team overall has, I think they're, without a doubt, they've used that talent the best. So I don't have much doubt that this Rams team can be the fourth best team in the NFC. The Packers, Jordan Love obviously proved himself later last season as a pretty reliable quarterback to lean on. And this season is the time he has to show everybody that he's going to be good for one whole season instead of a half season miracle. I think they can be very good. Matt LaFleur, you know, I'm a huge fan of. Yash knows I'm a huge fan of. Everybody knows. Um, I think that this team can be really great. With the Falcons, the reason why I'm not putting them any higher is yes, they have an immense amount of talent. They have really great uh, pieces offensively, defensively. Yes, actually, yes. But my thing is, I just don't know that coaching staff has that ability to utilize them in the best way possible.
Technically,
Um,
however, they would be the fourth seed, right? Because of the division.
yes, okay, that's true. Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, so they would be fourth, and in this case, I think the Rams would be fifth, if I'm not wrong, or
Yeah, fifth.
sixth in this
They
case.
would be fifth.
They would be fifth, and then the Packers would fall down to sixth. Um, and then with the Seahawks at seven, for me, the Seahawks, Mike McDonald, I'm a huge fan of. Defensive mastermind, knows the game better than anybody else when it comes to a defensive side of the ball. I think he's going to make Tariq Woolen, fantastic guys on the defensive side of the ball, make them a lot better. At the same time, I'm just not sure that they're going to be playoff bound yet. I'm not going to sit here and say that. However, I think this is going to be an extremely talented team that could well definitely make the playoffs. Cowboys, Bears, Saints. Bears I have very high. Reason why I told everybody that, you know, Caleb Williams was going to be a bust, and I don't think I've ever been more wrong after watching this preseason. This man has just torn apart everybody. We're seeing a better version of Patrick Mahomes, talent wise.
Whoa. Oh, talent. Wow. That's a very impressive
Those throws
statement.
Patrick Mahomes couldn't make. The throws that he made in the preseason, Patrick Mahomes couldn't make in his rookie year. He could not do those things. Like that pass where you gotta understand when you're throwing that ball, you could be a baseball player, but if your neck is like this and you throw the ball like that, I don't know how you do those things. Like you throw the ball when your neck's like this. You don't even look at the guy. You just throw the ball like this, and it goes up for 50 yards. Mahomes can throw it, but Mahomes will always look. This guy doesn't even look, and he throws right into the guy's hands. Some of the throws that people missed on that team, Rome Odunze included, they were given to them. 50-yard bombs just right in their hands. That's something that you don't see. And I didn't see in his college tape. I'll be very frank. I did not see this type of stuff in his college tape. The preseason showed it a lot more. And trust me, when I make the statement that he has more talent than Patrick Mahomes when he was a rookie, I mean it sincerely. Dallas Cowboys, reason why I'm saying eighth, new defensive coordinator is a 3-4 a kind of different system than what Dan Quinn had. Lost some defensive players. They're I mean they're a similar team. They've had a lot of injuries over the past few seasons. Micah Parsons is Micah Parsons. Their offense lost Tony Pollard. I'm not sure if it was a big loss, if I'm being honest with you, but they lost Tony Pollard. Their offensive line is quite old. Dak Prescott had a better statistical season than Patrick Mahomes from a lot of aspects, but I just don't think he's going to be the same this season. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb coming in late, etc. So a lot of discrepancies with the Cowboys, and also it's just fun to see the Cowboys fans cry. Um, Saints, Bucks, Vikings. The Saints they have a very talented roster, but again, it's just that nurturing of that team that's going to take a bit more time. But I think they can definitely make a very good roster spot, a very good spot as a team overall in a year or so. With the Bucks, not sold on the offense. They lost their offensive coordinator. I don't know how the new offensive coordinator is going to utilize Baker Mayfield to his best. and those pieces that he already has. Mike Evans is getting older. Chris Godwin, not old by any means, but he hasn't been that incredible option that he was before Tom Brady and after Tom Brady arrived. So not sold on that yet. With the Vikings, I think the Vikings, without JJ McCarthy this season, they might struggle here and there, but I think they could be very good. They could be very good this season. Maybe you could put them at 10. I'm putting them 12 right now because that defense, they lost Daniil Hunter, their best player, on that defense, and now I don't know what they're gonna do really. They have Dallas Turner who showed up in the preseason, but again, you don't know what he's gonna do. So I can't say anything definite about the Vikings. Washington Commanders, for me, other than the greatest ball man alive, the greatest gentleman who's bald right now on the Los Angeles Chargers, our GM, our guy, the only better GM on the planet right now, from a rookie standpoint, rookie GM standpoint, is the Washington Commanders. That draft that he made, the trades that he made, I mean, if there's one quote I can summarize him in, it's no risk, no reward. I mean, this guy put it all out on the line to get the players he did. He got Mike Sainristil, got Jason Newton, who Yash, everybody knows Yash was a huge fan of. I know I was a huge fan of him too. And you got him in the second round along with Mike Sainristil, who well could be the defense rookie of the year. Incredible talent overall from a cornerback standpoint. So the Washington Commanders with that talent, Dan Quinn's going to make a really good defense out of it. That offense, I have no idea. It has talent, but I don't know how it's going to work out. The Arizona Cardinals, I'm just not sold on their defense. They got a lot of good draft picks, so I'm just not sold on their defense. Marvin Harrison Jr., let's see what he does this season. I think he can be an incredible rookie, but it just depends on all that system. For me, the Panthers, they have an incredible coach. I mean, he took Baker Mayfield to the next level. An incredible coach. I don't know, Yash, if you saw this, but I remember seeing this short where he stood outside like he was the teacher on the first day of school and welcomed in every single player. No
Yes.
other coach has ever done that. No other coach has ever done that. That just shows the type of gentleman that he is. It's a character that you don't get out of many people. I respect that, honestly. I really do. So he's a wonderful guy, but that team isn't wonderful by any means. It's a tough team to get back, but I think he can do it. Give him 3 years time. I think he can make this a playoff team. New York Giants. Guys, I told you a season ago, Joe Shane is one of the best general managers in the league. One decision screwed him up, and it screwed the entire team up. Saquon Barkley. Second decision that screwed him up, Daniel Jones. These two decisions have been one of the worst in franchise history. Um, I get it.
I agree.
Saquon, in the Saquon case, you didn't have much of a choice. I'll give you that. But still, it's an embarrassment that they had to let him go. One more thing I'll say about the Chicago Bears. That boy Austin Booker is no joke. If you guys saw my DN list, which I saw the views, you guys didn't commit. I saw the views. I didn't even hit a 25. I know you guys didn't commit. But if you looked at my views, I put Austin Booker as a top 10 defensive end entering this draft. That man balled out during that preseason. That man balled out during that preseason. And if you want to know anything else, Defensive Rookie of the Year of 2024 is going to be Austin Booker. Book it.
Ooh,
That's my
damn.
ranking.
That is a sizzling take right there. As far as my predictions, they're pretty similar to Akilesh. I have a few different changes. Like I said, I did a off a schedule simulation. The NFC North has a little bit of an easier schedule than some of um, the NFC West teams. So while I agree with you that I think the Rams are a better team than the Packers, I think the Packers are going to be in a situation where they end up getting that 5 seed. I actually had them almost getting the 3 seed, but the Lions ended up winning that over on
Yeah.
tiebreaker. I do also think that they're a better overall roster, so I think that there's a good chance that they could beat the Packers in both games this year, even if the Packers are very good. The Falcons are going to get the 4 seed by default. Not only do they have the easiest schedule in football, but they're in a pretty weak division. I think that they're
Yeah.
the
It's
best
true.
roster in there. You could argue that in the Buccaneers, but at the end of the day, the real question I have is just with the coaching staff, but with how easy of a schedule they have, they still might end up making the playoffs just for that. The 49ers, the Eagles, they have two easier schedules than the Lions, so I think they end up getting the number 1 and the number 2 seed. I'll go even further to say that the Niners end up winning 14 plus games just because of their schedule. It's very much in that possibility. As far as the Seattle Seahawks, like Akhilesh said, big fan of Mike McDonald. I'm also a big fan of their offensive coordinator. I think his name is Ryan Grubbs, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Very good at deep ball passes. That's one of Geno Smith's specialties. He was the most efficient deep ball passer 2 years ago, according to Amazon Next Gen Stats, pretty much by any metric you put out there. And with that defense, what Mike McDonald's done with the Ravens, not saying it's a Legion of Boom defense, but with that
Yeah,
pieces that they have
it
in the
could
second,
be.
it's pretty close. Um, and I think it'll be just enough to get them the playoffs. As far as the Cowboys go, yeah, I mean, yeah, they re-signed CeeDee Lamb. Micah Parsons and Dak Prescott look like they might be at least there for the near future. But the contract situation's up. It's tough to see how they're going to play pretty much as a team. On top of that, Mike Zimmer's the new defensive coordinator. I'm just not a big fan of that. You got guys like Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland, who I think maximize their potential under Dan Quinn because of their skill set and how Dan Quinn utilized it. I just don't see the same thing with Mike Zimmer. His defensive back knowledge was, or his utilization of defensive backs in his
Has
last
not been good.
couple of years, it just was not good with the Vikings. So I just like Micah Parsons might be the only one carrying this defense really at the end of the day. A lot of the defense pieces are getting older, like a DeMarcus Lawrence. So yeah, I just see them missing the playoffs. They remind me a lot of the Cowboys teams that barely missed the playoffs in 17 and 19 and that type of stuff. The Buccaneers, I like this team, but I just don't think their schedule is going to line up for them. I just there are too many questions about them, in my opinion, as far as their depth, as far as their offensive line, as far as can Baker Mayfield continue to do what he did last year and get another 4,000 pass season without Dave Canales? I'm not a big fan of their new offensive coordinator either. So I just don't. There are too many questions for me as far as the Buccaneers. The Bears, I like what their progress is. I'm not the biggest Matt Eberflus fan, and their defense still has a few questions to me, especially with their run defense, the two defensive tackles, the lack of depth behind their three best linebackers. It just seems to me that might hold them back, but things could change. This is a team that I very much see being active at the trade deadline. If they make one or two moves, my opinion could very much change on them, and they could end up being a playoff team because their offense is very good. Like Akilah said, Caleb Williams is super talented. I've been super high on Caleb Williams pretty much since he was a freshman, since his first game against Texas. That game was just incredible. Um, and, he has one of the most loaded offenses in the league and a very good offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron. So I fully expect this team to be in competition for a playoff spot. Cardinals, I'm a big fan of Jonathan Gannon. I like the improvements I've seen from their defense. I think they were fighting a lot. So that remind me a little bit of the 2022 Lions team. Now you have Kyler Murray coming back. Marvin Harrison, I think, is going to have a very good rookie season. I think that's just enough to where they are going to be a middle of the pack team compared to some of the teams below them. The New Orleans Saints, I agree with you that they're a very talented team, but their coaching is very, very underwhelming. And this is a really, really old roster with a lot of questions at key positions. Can Cam Jordan continue to be Cam Jordan? He's been regressing. Marshawn Lattimore struggled with injuries. Derek Carr, I don't know what the hell is going on. One week he looks like a borderline top 10 quarterback. Next week he looks like he should be not in the league, right? Alvin Kamara, what is the situation with him? They have young guys who've developed well, but not like that well. So, there are too
Yeah,
many
true.
questions with the Saints for me to sit here, especially with the coaching too, to sit here and tell me that they're going to be any higher than 12. Vikings, I would have had them higher. I think Kevin O'Connell's a great coach. I think Brian Flores is a great defensive coordinator. But when you have Sam Darnold as your quarterback, JJ McCarthy got hurt for the whole year, and especially with that schedule, it just makes me feel like the Vikings are not going to be as good as they probably
Yeah,
should have this past
fair.
year. And then the
Fair.
next two teams, they're really just developing young quarterbacks, young rosters, whatnot. And then the Giants, yeah, I mean, this is the worst roster in football. One of the worst quarterbacks in the league.
Oh,
Um, they have no run game whatsoever. I mean, their wide receiver group is probably going to have. I mean, there's no Isaiah Hodgins anymore. Sterling Shepard is coming off another injury. You got Wandale Robinson, who's good but talented, but he's not developed in the way I expected of him. And then you got what? Malik Neighbors is good, but he's a rookie. He's going to have to carry this receiving core if there's anything. Darren Waller, I don't know what the hell is the situation. I think he retired, but there have been rumors about that and God knows what else in his personal life. They have a horrible offensive line, and Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas are always injured. Their defense got a little better with the addition of Brian Burns. At least they have a good pass rush, but they don't have a good
Yeah.
defense coordinator, in my opinion, anymore. I like Brian Dable as a coach, but there's just way, way, way too many. Just like this team is pretty much the definition of Swiss cheese. Uh, yes, a piece of Swiss cheese. I mean, there are so many holes in this team that you can punch. They are the worst roster in football. There's no question about that, and they are going to be the worst team in football. And I don't even think that's really a question to me because there's nothing that's optimistic about the New York Giants. And I'm really sorry. No, I'm not. You know what? No, I'm not. I'm a 49ers fan. I hate the Giants. I'm not sorry about the Giants being the last place. But yeah, I mean, it is sad. It's tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah, very. And now we are going to be going into, as I try to share the screen again.
And Yash's video is working, by the way, now.
Yeah,
Finally.
interesting. But now we're going to go into the award predictions and the playoff predictions. As you can see, Akhilesh hasn't put in his playoff predictions yet, but he will be, going over that as we continue the video. As far as awards, I mean, we have very similar awards as far as MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. I think one thing we can say is, as just far as for me personally, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, what we've seen over the last 2 years, especially with one of the worst receiving cores in the league. And now you talk about probably maybe not the most star-studded receiving core, but definitely one of the deepest receiving cores as far as just players. And I've talked about this before as far as just players who can really complement each other's games in the receiving core, guys who can really mask each other's flaws. You get rid of a guy who is really like a hindrance to the team, like a Kadarius Toney, and now all of a sudden the Kansas City Chiefs, I would argue, have given Patrick Mahomes the perfect group of weapons to work with as far as wanting to maximize the amount of yards he get. And I really would not be surprised if Mahomes goes for breaks any passing record, yards, touchdowns, etc. I would make an argument that he might be the first quarterback this year to throw for more than 6,000 yards. And I know Akilesh and I have talked about that in the past. This might be that year for the Kansas City Chiefs. As far as DPOI, I think TJ Watt. I mean, that's pretty obvious to both me and Akilesh. Watt has led the league in sacks 3 of the last 4 years. I think he's inclined to do the same thing this year. The Steelers have a better defense this year than I think they've had over the last 2-3 years, which gives Watt a little bit more opportunities. As far as coach of the year, I talked about Brian Callahan, the Titans being a new coach, what the Titans have endured over the last couple of years. I think it makes sense that Callahan wins if the Titans make the playoffs. Comeback player of the year, Nick Chubb went through a horrific injury last year. That was really, really hard to see. If you don't like graphic injuries, I would not suggest looking it up. But if you have a stomach for that, it's hard to watch. But Chubb is a great player nonetheless, and I have with Kevin Stefanski as his coach, I have some sort of faith that he can bounce back and maybe at least be 1,000-yard rusher and win that award. Offensive coach, assistant coach of the year. I think it's no surprise to anyone who's been tuning in for us over the summer, over pretty much this whole offseason. I'm a huge Ryan Nielsen fan. I think this Jaguars defense is going to be really good. And then as far as offensive and defensive rookie of the year, yeah. So Mike, as far as Washington, there's two defensive players. They're both on Washington that I had in consideration for defensive rookie of the year, and they were my guy Jerzon, or Johnny Newton now as he calls himself, and Mike Sainristil, who is a cornerback at the Michigan team that I love to watch in my senior year of high school. The Michigan team I grew up watching with Jim Harbaugh and whatnot, and the guy who really kind of emulated a Richard Sherman in the way he played with Stanford. So I see a lot of similarities. He's going to the same defensive coordinator that Sherman had in his early days in Dan Quinn. So the same guy to develop him. Dan Quinn's good at developing young defensive talent. He did the same thing with Micah Parsons. So I would not be surprised if he does the same thing with Johnny Newton. But with Mike Sainristil, I just expect Sanders still to, be one of those guys. I would not be surprised if he leads the league in interceptions. In fact, I can make that argument with a bunch of defensive backs, but Sanders still has such good ball skills that I really would not be surprised about that. Now, would I say that that's likely? Probably not. But do I think that he has an opportunity to be in that conversation? Absolutely. So yeah, I will call him my defensive rookie of the year. As far as offensive rookie of the year, hot take here. As far as what I said about Patrick Mahomes, I think that translates to some of his receivers. Xavier Worthy, I think, has the opportunity, especially now that Marquise Brown is injured. With the legal situation of Rashee Rice, we don't know what that's going to entail. Travis Kelce has had, less yardage year by year. We'll see if that continues, is that just a one-off year or whatnot. But Xavier Worthy looks to be that number one receiver this year for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know Andy Reid's going to use him in a lot of different ways. I would not be surprised if Xavier Worthy, especially with the whole end around game and all these different types of play calls that Andy Reid likes to run, he could break. I would not be surprised if he breaks Randy Moss's record for the most receiving touchdowns in a season. Now, again, like Mike Sanders still, is that likely to happen? Probably not. But is there a chance? For me, absolutely with Xavier Worthy. I don't think he's just a speed receiver like John Ross was. We've never seen a guy with that type of deep threat ability who can catch, run routes with that type of speed. So yeah, that's my award predictions. Akilesh, I know you have something similar with that.
Yeah, most of mine are. I mean, Yash kind of really summed it up. When it comes to Pat Mahomes, I think he's having that receiver core that is similar to the ones that he had in kind of 2018, the similar kind of style, similar type of play. I think that he's having that opportunity to have. I think it's very similar. TJ Watt for me, he's been my favorite player in the NFL since I ever watched the NFL. This guy completely dominates, has an unstoppable motor. He puts the metal to the pedal and he just moves like anything else. He's an incredible player. So for me, TJ Watt, I think he'll break his own sack record again
Wow.
this year.
Okay.
And then when it comes to the offensive rookie of the year, Caleb Williams for me, you guys know that going into the draft, I thought he was going to be a bust. Um, am I gonna completely reverse from that? I said it in previously in this video. I might. I really do. Because based on the way he played in that preseason, the balls he was throwing overall, just his natural ability just impressed me so much. And I think he's going to be a winner more than anything else for this Bears franchise. So I think that's why he's going to take Offensive Rookie of the Year. For me, there's a typo here, but Austin Booker from the Chicago Bears, not the Eagles, I think will take Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, will he be still on? Will he start? I don't know. If he does, I think he'll take it. Because this man, from what I see, I mean, we saw Jared Verse getting drafted early. We saw Jason Newton getting drafted early. This guy has the same level of talent as those guys, same level of skills, same level of motor. And in fact, when we looked at preseason, I felt he was the best defensive player in the entire preseason. His ability to just move on the ball against the tackles, play inside, it's just unfathomable. I mean, me and Yash talked about it quite a lot, especially in our review videos in regards to the defensive ends, etc. This guy was an absolute machine coming out of Kansas. No one was looking at him, and thank God Ryan Poles, the GOAT GM at this moment in time, looked at it. Um, then after that, when it comes to Coach of the Year, he's going with Brian Callahan. I think this guy's kind of a Brian Callahan fan, like I am a Jim Ortiz fan. It's a little crazy, but at the same
I'm not the
time,
biggest Brian Callahan fan, but I think
no, no, no,
he
no.
has a lot working for him this year, and I do think he's better than most people say. So I do
I
think this
mean,
year he will be.
okay, like what I'm gonna say is he's not a coach of the year right now. I think he's a coach of the year maybe 2 years down the line.
With the
I
talent that
don't
they
think
have
the
in this
Titans are a
roster,
playoff team. Like if I'm being really realistic, I'm benchmark they might be in the playoffs. That's how I'm thinking about it
well,
right
if
now.
they make the playoffs, that's the argument to be made. Like if they make the playoffs, no one expects them to make the playoffs. At that point, I think Brian Callahan
Sure.
would win the Coach of the Year, right? Just based on the arguments, usually what the
I
criteria
mean,
is.
but look, but last year, right? Last year, the Houston Texans made the playoffs. That didn't mean the head coach got the coach of the year.
True, but he was in the conversation. Same with Shane
True.
Steichen.
Right, right. But even then, in that point, it's just unfortunate in that case. I think Dan Campbell has to have one. I mean, this guy is. We haven't seen many coaches like this, but he's a coach. He's not an offensive coordinator as a coach or a defensive coordinator as a coach. He's a coach, and I think he's used his staff and his players so well. This guy's got to get one at some point in time. Nick Chubb, me and Yash obviously agreed on Ryan Nelson also. if you guys have watched this enough, as Yash has explained previously, this guy as an assistant has transcended the overall level of play of these guys, and I think he's just making that Jaguars defense slowly becoming unstoppable.
All right, and now, well, okay. For the most part, like I said, we have very similar awards as far as coaches. As far as Caleb Williams, I don't. If you made that argument, I really wouldn't be mad at that. Like I said, he's my number one player off the draft board. I think he's a generational talent. I really wouldn't be mad. I had Caleb Williams as my number one um, as my rookie of the year originally, but I did change that after consideration. As far as my whole logic was, if Caleb Williams breaks every passing record and Xavier Worthy breaks receiving records like that, let me ask you this: would you rather take Randy Moss's receiving record as a rookie, or would you take Justin Herbert's passing record? For me, I would take Randy Moss. For that reason, I just feel like the voters would lean to Xavier Worthy, but I would not be mad as far as Caleb Williams. And as far as
See,
Austin Booker,
but Yash, if you don't mind me interrupting, but that makes you lose your point. Essentially, what you're saying is the rookie of the year is dependent on the gravity of the type of record you're breaking. Essentially, what you're saying is since Randy Moss, from a gravity standpoint, is just so much more of a, he's a Hall of Famer, and Justin Herbert is just Justin Herbert. By the way, he's not.
well, no,
Let's not
that's
make
not
him
what I'm
appear
making.
that way.
I'm making the argument more that at that point in time, if you ask anybody how impressive Randy Moss is, let's just say they had it in the same season, I feel more
Sure.
people would be more inclined to favor Randy Moss's record than they
Fair,
would.
but you're gonna get that Randy Moss record from a guy who's right now looking for right now. If he retires and hasn't even been 10 seasons into his career, he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Sure.
He's already recognized as the second greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. If you have that guy throwing to you and you get the Randy Moss touchdown breaking record, is it gonna be as great as having a old Keenan Allen, a new wide receiver in Romeo Denze? You have a receiver that hasn't established himself yet in that top five class. You take a franchise that's never won, that hasn't had a good quarterback in over 2 decades, and you come in and you get them a playoff season.
That's a fair argument to make.
I
And I
don't know.
mean, again, like that'll be an interesting thing to see if both of them are breaking records, who ends up winning that. And then as far as Austin Booker, I'll say my only criticism with that is just I don't know how much opportunity he'll get to play. If he
Yeah,
does have that
fair, very
opportunity, I
fair.
can make that argument, but I don't know how much opportunity. But I do like that pick. It's a bold, very bold take, but I like it. Now, as far as the playoff
Fair.
predictions, very shortly, we're just going to go. So I'm just going to kind of review what my seeding was for the playoffs. Number one was Kansas City, Baltimore. Then we got Jacksonville, Buffalo, Houston, Pittsburgh, and Tennessee. And of course, I did this off a schedule simulator. This doesn't necessarily mean, okay, number one is the best team. Well, Kansas City is the best team, but you get the point. Um,
Right.
but as far as just seeding goes, it leads to different matchups, very interesting matchups. And based on what my seeding ends up, I think the Titans beat the Ravens in if they are in the playoffs. I think they're a bad matchup specifically for the Ravens. We've seen what a team like the Bengals does every time they play the Ravens. They're very good at destroying that Ravens secondary. The Ravens have a little bit of a shady old line, in my opinion. I think the Titans' defensive line is going to get better as the year goes on. They're a blitz-heavy team led by a blitz-heavy defensive coordinator in Denard Wilson. I think just matchup-wise, they're a bad matchup for a Ravens team who just seems to struggle in the playoffs. So yeah, I would have the Titans. That's my upset matchup in the wild card. The Jaguars over the Steelers, not really much to say. The Jaguars are just a better team. The Steelers are probably just going to luck into the playoffs, if anything, and they still have to figure out their quarterback situation. Jaguars are going to have a defense that just strangles whoever is the quarterback under center for Pittsburgh. Texans over Bills. I mean, these are two interesting teams to me. Really came down to just a few things. I mean, it's to me, it's pretty basic. Number one, Texans are a better roster in general, better defense, better receiving core, better offensive line. And I might argue, I think Josh Allen's a better quarterback at this current moment, but I might argue that CJ Stroud has a better season than Josh Allen, especially with the weapons that he has. And I think D'Amico Ryans is going to end up being a better coach than Sean McDermott in by the end of this year with just more experience, right? So just for me, I think the Texans are better than the Bills. So I think they end up winning that matchup easily. Uh, the Eagles versus the Seahawks. The Eagles are just a better team. They have a great offensive line, great running back. The Seahawks are still figuring out the quarterback situation. The Eagles got a better quarterback, got better coordinators on both sides of the ball, more experience. I think that just helps them end up winning. Lions over Rams. Seems like these two teams play all the time. They're playing week 1, 2 on Sunday Night Football. That's going to be a hell of a matchup. Um, but yeah, the Detroit is just a better team, in my opinion. They're going to get the home field advantage, and they got a hell of a home field advantage. The pass rush is very good. I question the Rams' offensive line on the tackle sides a little bit and their depth overall. For that reason, I think it's still going to be a very good matchup, but I just think the Lions edge them out just by a little bit. And then the Packers Falcons, yeah, I just don't trust the Falcons coaching staff, quarterback, just enough to beat a Packers team with a good defense, very young. We saw what they did to Dallas last year. I think they'll do even worse against the Falcons team that's just very inexperienced. As far as my wild card matchups, obviously I got the Chiefs and the 49ers as my two teams with the first round bye. Chiefs are going to play the lowest seed, the Titans. I think that's an easy win for them. Chiefs are just right now the best team in football. The Jaguars over the Texans. People might argue the Texans. They have a better quarterback. I agree with that. They have a better offense, but I think the Jags are a better overall roster. They're better coached as far as just coordinators overall. I do question, the defensive coordinator behind D'Amico Ryans as far as just schemes at times, not always. I just think in a one playoff matchup, a team with a more complete roster and less flaws, I think ends up winning, and I think the Jags will get the advantage there. 49ers over the Packers. 49ers just own the Packers in general over the playoffs, but I'm not going to go off of that. I'm just going to say that 49ers, they have some unfinished business to do. Brock Purdy is there. Brandon Ayuk, they finally kept him under contract. Now Trent Williams, same deal. This Packers team is still pretty young and pretty inexperienced. And the Packers O-line has a few questions. The Niners are always great as far as what they do on the pass rush side with Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave. So I think that's a favorable matchup for them. I think the Niners win based on what they do in the trenches. Lions over the Eagles. That's going to be, to me, the matchup of the divisional round. I think that'll be the game of the year, maybe based on how the season goes this year for both teams. That is an especially very interesting matchup. Two really good teams on every side of the ball, very similarly matched up teams. The
Yeah,
Eagles have a
good
little bit
point.
of balance as far as their offense, but the Lions, they are a pass heavy team as far as when they're aggressive as far as their pass, but they like to run the ball because they have a very deep run game as far as David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think
Yeah.
they still have Jamar Jefferson. Correct me if I'm wrong. And a defense that's slowly getting better. So that is going to be a very interesting matchup. But I think the Lions, to me, I just think that the Lions, they've gotten better over last year. If you asked me this maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I might have said the Eagles. But
Right.
I just think that the Eagles lost a lot of veteran depth, a lot of veteran experience, specifically in Jason Kelsey
Jason Kelsey.
and Fletcher Cox. I think that's going to bite them with the team with the Lions that added a guy like Marcus Davenport on the pass rush, that added a guy like DJ Reader on the inside. That Eagles O line is young and they're going to struggle a little bit. And I think the Lions take the slight advantage there. Now, AFC Championship and NFC Championship. The Lions, I'm going to start with the Lions versus 49ers. I've talked about this a little bit over the offseason, not too much. I do not have full trust in my 49ers right now. And that's heartbreaking for me to say. I am right now in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am 70 miles away, okay, from New Orleans, okay? The New Orleans is where the Super Bowl is this year. You know how much I would give, and you know how much I would give to watch the Super
Yeah,
Bowl with the 49ers this year. When I get that opportunity, I would give everything I could. But I just, right now, at this current moment, with this roster, we haven't seen a game be played yet. So this could change.
fair.
I currently think the Lions have a better overall roster, more complete. Ben Johnson came back. Jared Goff is a little bit more experienced than Brock Purdy, and we saw what they did last year. They put the Niners on their foot. The Niners, I think, got away with a little bit of high-end talent, as certain YouTubers would call it, urinating tree. But the Lions, they're going to come back with vengeance. This is a team that is led by a coach, as you mentioned, in Dan Campbell, who is very, very, very aggressive. He is a coach. He makes his team fight and fight till ends meet. and I think the Lions will get a little bit of revenge as we stand today uh, on what is it when on Wednesday of the
Think-
August 4th, right? Yes, I cannot see my calendar. August 4th, 2024, I think the Lions end up beating the 49ers. That's hard for me to say as a 49ers fan.
Right.
And then the Kansas City Chiefs. They're just better. They're just better than everyone in the AFC, and they just find a way to win. So what can I say? They're just gonna make the Super Bowl. And then yeah, I mean, I think I think the Lions Chiefs is gonna be a very good Super Bowl matchup. Lions are good as far as familiar in indoor stadiums. But Kansas City, I mean, when you have that man Patrick Mahomes, one thing I've learned is just don't bet against him. I made that mistake and I've actually bet money on him and I've lost money. So just don't be me, man. It's hard for me to say, but they have the lucky charm of freaking Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, kids, if you almost heard me cuss. If you're under 8, don't say what I said, but I'm just so pissed. I see this every freaking year, man. It's the same thing. But hey, at least we get to witness maybe a future GOAT in action.
Yeah.
The Chiefs just look unstoppable, and that's it's just hard to swallow. But Akilesh, I mean, I'm distraught saying this is painful to say, but go ahead, take your playoff predictions.
First of all, very, very well done. I think overall the way you went through the entire thing was very emotion-packed one, but mostly true. Now with mine, I apologize for not updating it earlier, but I will go as we're kind of progressing through. So when it comes to, for me, when it comes to Ravens and the Bengals, I think it's going to be a good game. I don't think the Bengals are going to start off their season flying high by any means, but I think they're going to get up to a place where they come in and they're going to still be a team to be threatened with. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the Ravens are going to edge them out. It's going to be a close, nail-biting one, high scoring, I think. But it'll be kind of game which is like, I personally think like 28-25, something like that. It will be a close game. But I think the Ravens will beat them out to it. Jaguars and Dolphins, I'm going to call an upset here, and I'm going to take the
Ooh.
Dolphins over the Jaguars. Now, why I feel this, they've been in the playoffs twice in a row. Jaguars haven't had enough of that experience as a defensive group plus an offensive group. They had one 2 years ago to beat the Brandon Staley Chargers. Full stop. So when it comes to Dolphins now, I just feel like with the past 2 years that they've had, kind of experience that they've gained, Tua, hopefully, for their sakes at least, becoming a more fluid passer overall. I think he's going to make havoc of
And
that
that
place.
Dolphins offense is a bad matchup for the Jags.
It
So
is.
I
It
like
is.
that.
It is. So I'm gonna take the Dolphins over them. I'm gonna agree with your take when it comes to Texans versus the Bills. Now, the Bills, just Josh Allen, the better quarterback? Yes. Currently, yes, he is. But I feel CJ Stroud, with the talent that he has, the coaching staff that he has, overall as a group, I think they're gonna edge out the Bills. And I think it's gonna be similar to what we saw against last year against Cleveland. I think it's gonna be a similar result when it comes to the Texans. Um, in terms of the NFC, for me, the NFC right now, as it stands, based on my standings here, I'm gonna take the Seahawks, and they're gonna lose against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this overall run game, overall style of play, physicality, the Eagles are better right now. Lions, personally, are don't get me wrong here, but I think the Lions are gonna smoke the Packers. I
Wow.
think I think it's gonna be, Detroit, deep dish pizza in Detroit. It's going to be a whole wrap up, as far as I see it. And then when it comes to the Rams against the Falcons, I'm taking the Rams. Look, Sean McVay, you just don't underestimate. When it comes to the playoff time, when it comes to any time, that man is probably the smartest guy in the entire NFL right now from an offensive standpoint. Unbelievable. So that's mine to wild card, etc. Now, coming in the first round, we'll go with the NFC here since it being here. With the San Francisco 49ers, I'm going to take the Niners. I believe it would be the Niners versus the Rams, if I'm not wrong. And I think in that one, I'm going to take the Niners. Look, they have a deep roster right now. They're more developed overall. I think they're just better as an overall group, as an overall team. I'm going to take the Niners on that one. Then comes the Lions and the Eagles. And I'm going to agree with Yash on this one. I think the Lions will beat the Eagles. It's going to be a nail biter. I'll repeat that again, but it's going to be one fun match because it's going to be on the ground, run the ball, pound the ball type style of football. But I think the Lions are going to end up winning because they're going to do whatever it takes to win. And I think that type of style is going to get them there. For the AFC, Chiefs are the Chiefs. I mean, we really don't need to discuss this any further. Especially, I get it, it's the Ravens, but they're just going to take it. It has to be at this point that they're going to take over any team in the AFC. Especially with that roster that they have, I think they can take over pretty much any team. I think they edge out the Ravens by just a little bit. And then when it comes to the Miami Dolphins versus the Texans, I'm taking the Texans. Now, is it a bold choice? Yes, but I'm taking the Texans right now. I see CJ Stroud as being that kind of guy that, in a year maybe might be the guy who's right behind Mahomes. I think he might be that second quarterback that we look at as like he's the second best quarterback in the entire National Football League because he is playing like that. You look at the amount of talent that he has, it's not exceptional by any means. It's good, not exceptional, but he makes it exceptional. That's how you know he's a fantastic quarterback. So I'm going to go with there when it comes to the Texans. So thanks, Yash, by the way, for updating it as we go.
Absolutely. And,
Um,
and you said you had the 49ers or the Rams?
yeah.
Yes.
Um, when it comes now to the NFC Championship, it's going to be the Chiefs against the Texans, and then the Lions against the Niners. When it comes to Chiefs versus Texans, I'm going to take the Chiefs. At this point, it's kind of a given that we're taking the Chiefs, but I'm going to take the Chiefs here. And the Lions against the Niners. Um, I completely agree with Josh. This is a return of this is the return of the lion. The lion is the king of the jungle. It, wow. The lion is the king of the jungle. Wow. Okay, repeat that. We're cutting that from the audio tape, but okay. The lion is the king of the jungle, okay? And it just got dethroned by some stupid tiger or gazelle on the side. Now it's time for it to regain its territory, regain its land, its kingdom. The Lions will win. The Lions will beat the 49ers at the 49ers stadium in front of every single 49ers fan to make sure that blue is running big in every single place. And
Mhm.
now for the Super Bowl in New Orleans, Louisiana. The Lions are taking the win. They're going to run over the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not going to give them a chance to win this game. The Lions are going to take the win. The Michigan Tank is going to take that win with that stacked offensive line. Yeah, that's the name I'm giving them. The Michigan Tank offensive line. That's what I'm giving them as a name. David Montgomery,
You two, pick that up.
Jameer.
Pick that up right there.
No, no. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you
Trademark
right
that.
now.
Detroit Lions
That
got to trademark that.
the Michigan Tank is gonna roll over this Kansas City Chiefs defense. No defensive back is gonna be able to handle three running backs that are as elusive as they are. This is the amazing thing that they've done from a GM standpoint. They've picked three running backs that could play receiver, that could play hard-nosed running back, and can block. That's never been done before. Apart from the fact that they have, bar none, the best offensive line in the league, without a shadow of a doubt, that Michigan Tank is going to ride all day long. You have an experienced quarterback in Jared Goff, Amondra St. Brown. You have an offense that is with the best offensive coordinator in the league, without a doubt. You have a defense that's extremely aggressive. They just got back. Well, they lost the safety. I think I was to the Eagles, if I'm not wrong. But even
Chauncey
then,
Gardner Johnson, yep.
you got one of the best inside tackles in the entire league last year. You have Aiden Hutchinson, who is kind of becoming that Max Crosby almost like type of player, right? That team is going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to give the Kansas City Chiefs a run for their money. And I'll say this, they're the only team in the league that can do that. They're the only team in the league that has been proven to do that. We get it. Mahomes didn't have the receiver core he had. All I'm going to say is this, though. Tell me when last time the Lions looked like a vulnerable team. Vulnerable. Never. Not once last year did they look vulnerable. They never got blown out last year. The only time they spoiled themselves was in that NFC Championship game. And personally, if I'm being honest, I don't think many of those decisions Stan Campbell made were bad moves. He made one bad fourth down decision. Other than that, fantastic calls. He made those right calls. You know why? Often people criticize this about Brandon Staley, but I'll sit here and defend him in this. You take a fourth down conversion, not because you want to show the league who you are. Rather, you believe in your team to make that play. Players on the Chargers have proven this. They've stood up on the line. Even players, Joey Bosa has said this himself, and he wasn't the biggest fan of Brandon Staley. He said he believed in us to go make that play. That's why he was prepared for us to get that call, right? Dan Campbell is much more aggressive than Brandon Staley. He's going to do anything it takes to get that line, the king of the jungle. He's going to do anything it takes to become that king. Right now, the Chiefs are the king. They're presumed to be the king. He's telling everybody else they're putting us deep in that dirt. They're making us the ants. We got to be the lion. We got to be the king. We're going to throw them to the ants and we're going to become that king. We're going to become the lion, the king of the jungle. The Michigan tank is going to roll over the Kansas City Chiefs. In Louisiana, blue is going to be bleeding. I'm telling you, Detroit Lions. That's my take. Michigan tank, NFL, Detroit, if you're listening to this, you just got to pay me 100 million. I don't mind. It's a little bit of a it's a little fees for probably the best line you'll ever hear. You've heard of the monsters, the what was it called? The monsters of the Midway. The Michigan Tang is gonna go all the way. I'm telling you guys, you got that offensive line at 25 years old average. You guys got a long ways. That shirt is gonna be bleeding everywhere. I'll buy it if you guys want me to. Apart from the 100 million you're gonna send me, but even then, Michigan Tank, I'll
And in
take
the
it.
words of Randy Moss, Akilesh wants that money straight cash, homie.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, he
straight
does.
cash. No, no,
Straight
no debit,
cash.
no credit, no nothing. Straight cash. Straight
NFL
cash. If it
prediction.
could be done in $1, I wouldn't mind, but cash is preferable.
NFL predictions. You heard it right here. Detroit Lions are going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, according to Akilesh
Watch,
Srivatsa.
watch, watch.
Hey, it's going to be a fun NFL season. There's a lot to be excited
Not a
about.
doubt.
We all know that. This is going to this is something to watch for sure.
Yeah,
A lot of great teams, a lot of great players, a lot of great storylines, like always. But this is why the NFL is such a great sport, and we are excited more than ever um, to share content with you and provide you with some of the best coverage of the NFL season in 2024,
yep.
this upcoming year. But that's it for us today. Thank you guys so much for watching once again. Please remember to like and subscribe, share
Thank
this
you.
with any of friends that you guys have. We're trying to get this content as much as possible because we want to win more games than the Cleveland Browns do as two Indian kids right here
Yep.
talking about football. You don't get that often in an American football sport.
True.
Usually the
True.
Indian boys are talking about cricket or something like that. Not bad.
Okay.
I'm not
Come
dissing. I'm
on.
not dissing. Not bad, but
Okay.
you don't get a lot of football from Indian guys. Hey,
All right.
we're here
All
for
right.
that. But again, please remember to like and subscribe. And
Got doubt.
Yash and Akilesh out.
See ya.